Let me tell you a story about a young man named Rudy, who since he was a kid, all he wanted to do was play football for the University of Notre Dame. But nobody believed in him.
After high school, I'm going to play football at Notre Dame.
You're gonna play football at Notre Dame?
Yeah.
You see, Rudy wasn't always the strongest or the fastest kid, but he always gave 100% effort. And even then, people still made fun of him.
What a spaz.
But Rudy never gave up. Because even after high school, when his best buddy Pete, who really seemed to understand Rudy's dream about going to Notre Dame, tragically died in an accident at work. Which brings us to today, where we follow Rudy on his pursuit to Notre Dame in his road to glory. But before Rudy goes to Notre Dame, he has to talk to this priest about going JUCO because his grades are too low. But the priest told him that if he gets his grades up, he could probably get him into Notre Dame. So Rudy studied like you've never seen before. I mean, he was putting hours and hours and hours in. Rudy was so dedicated to getting to Notre Dame, he didn't care what he had to do.
I'll study 20 hours a day if I have to.
And unfortunately, he was too broke to even get into the games. So oftentimes, while the home games are going on, Rudy would just be standing outside, waiting for his chance to one day be a part of that team. But after months and even years of hard work, Rudy had finally been accepted into Notre Dame. But that was only half the battle, because Rudy is way down on the depth chart and he still has to try out for this team. And even though Rudy was getting crushed at the tryouts, he was showing a lot of heart. As you can see, he shuts off a blocker here and makes a tackle. And that was the kind of energy and effort that he's always had that allowed him to make the team today.
Wait, does that mean I'm on the team?
Yeah, kid, you're on the team.
Thank you!
And finally, coming in at 5'6", 165 pounds, Rudy Ruettiger was finally a member of the Notre Dame football team. And in his first few practices, although Rudy was getting beat up pretty badly, even sometimes looking like he got punched by Superman, he always got back up. No matter what practice it was, he always fought hard, gave 100% effort every single day. But since Rudy was so low on the depth chart, he didn't really get to dress for the games quite yet. The coaches told him that he still had a lot to prove, so he went on about proving it. He was working harder at practice and got better each and every day. Weeks and even months went by, and Rudy continued to work hard to earn the right to walk out of that Notre Dame tunnel. I mean, he didn't care if his body required immediate medical attention. Rudy was doing everything he could to one day be in that lineup. And by the end of the year, Rudy was becoming a star at practice, showing that he actually improved quite a bit over time. And although Rudy would not get the opportunity to play his first year, as Notre Dame would lose to Penn State in the Rose Bowl, Rudy was still excited to fight for another spot next season. And he upgraded quite a bit that offseason, but Rudy knew he still had a long way to go. He had to continue putting that same effort he's always put in, but also prove that he could really make an impact on the field. Because even in games where they knew that they would win by 50, they still didn't want to bring Rudy to the games. So his redshirt freshman year, Rudy just continued to push forward, and even though he wasn't even dressing for the games, he had a feeling that if he just continued to work hard towards what he wanted to do, he was going to get there regardless of nobody believing in him. And if anything, he had to do it for the one person who did always believe in him, his best pal Pete. So after another season where Rudy didn't get to play, he just kept getting better along the way and kept upgrading. And eventually, he would finally get the opportunity to move up in the depth chart. And this was a moment that Rudy was waiting for his entire life. There was absolutely no way that Rudy wasn't going to leave everything he had out on that field. And the coaches knew by the end of the practice that it was time to get Rudy involved, because he had finally moved up and become the third linebacker on this team. But coach told Rudy to sit for one more game and rest up because they had a surprise for him. After 2 full years, they finally asked Rudy to compete for the second string middle linebacker spot. And let me tell you right now, Rudy has never been more locked in his life, because he knows that all second stringers have to go to the games. So if he wins this battle, he'll finally be able to walk out of that tunnel. And that's exactly what he did, because now Rudy Ruettiger is the second string middle linebacker for the University of Notre Dame. As you can see right here, the one thing that ratings don't measure is heart, and Rudy has a lot of it. And Rudy was going to need some of that heart. because now that he was in the lineup, he needed to help Notre Dame win their next game against Louisiana Tech.
Home of the Fighting Irish. We have a ranked versus unranked battle coming up here. You know how chaos can ensue if they start smelling an upset. As we'll see a squad from Conference USA, the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs.
But this was just such a surreal moment for Rudy, and you couldn't believe he was finally running out of that tunnel. Rudy knew that he officially made it. In the very first drive of the game, Rudy is going out there on the field. The whole stadium is cheering his name. Everybody knows how long he's waited for this moment, when his friends and even his family came out to see this. Now to start this game off, the Notre Dame defense is getting a stop in the backfield, and the coach is telling Rudy to stay out on the field. So he goes back out there, and he's just looking to make a play. So when the ball is snapped, Rudy fights up the blocker, chases down the quarterback, and gets a sack! And up to this point, this is the greatest moment of Rudy Ruettiger's life. This is something that he's worked so hard for. And as the coach took him off the field, he got a standing ovation from the crowd while they were still cheering his name. But the game wasn't over. And when Rudy got back on the field, he had to help them win the game. As you can see right here, he's making a nice little tackle here in open space. And although Rudy didn't play too much this game, Notre Dame's defense was locked in when Rudy was on the field, because they got an interception here that pretty much sealed the game and allowed Notre Dame to walk out of here with a win and truly celebrate what Rudy had just accomplished. When this team loved Rudy so much, they picked him up on their shoulders and carried him out the stadium. At this point, everybody loved Rudy. Even the former player who rode the bench the whole time was happy for him. And this game was a moment that Rudy would never forget. But Rudy wasn't done, because now he had an entire football season ahead of him, and he had to help Notre Dame win their next game against Miami. And as you can see, there's a lot of times where Rudy gets so excited that he forgets to touch the sign.
Plenty of echoes will reverberate in victory at the end of the game. We've got a top 25 matchup on hand. Two of the premier teams in the land looking to make a statement that will resonate.
Now, the coaches had kept Rudy out up until the second quarter, and on his first play, unfortunately, Miami gets a huge play downfield.
Using the quick game. Still on his feet at the 45. Lots of
And even though there was times where Notre Dame's defense was doing well, there was a few plays where Rudy was able to get pressure, but the defense would still let up a big game. Coach had sat Rudy up until the fourth quarter, and it was almost like Rudy was kind of bad luck this game, because as soon as he hopped on the field, Miami throws a pass to the sideline, and the ball carrier takes it up the field and into the end zone for a touchdown. But Rudy would do everything he can while he was on the field to help will his team back in the game, including a tackle for loss here on first down, and then once again he finds himself in the backfield on second down. But unfortunately, that Miami offense was just too much for Notre Dame, and they were able to take a knee to run the clock out. And although that loss did hurt a little bit for Rudy, he went right back to training so he can get better and make a bigger impact for this team. Because Notre Dame knew they needed to get a win against their next opponent, Purdue.
In West Lafayette, Indiana, home to the Purdue Boilermakers, where the black and gold hoping to boiler up in this one.
Starting this game off on third down, Rudy is inspiring his teammates to play well. Because even though Rudy still doesn't play much, when he gets on the field, he makes his presence felt. And after the game is tied up 20-20 at halftime, Rudy feels that he's going to have to start making plays for his team. So on first down here, Rudy actually gets himself in the backfield and gets a tackle for loss. But coach takes Rudy out the game so they can put in a different package. But they really should just keep Rudy in the game all the time. Because when he's in there, even when the opposing team has the ball on first and goal at the 1, that Notre Dame defense will always step up due to the leadership of Rudy and continue to make stops for however many downs they need to. Anytime Rudy was in the game, if his teammates weren't doing it, he was always trying to make a play, as he got in the backfield once again for this game. But unfortunately, coach would take Rudy out, and by the time he put him back in, Purdue was already in victory formation. And after taking yet another heartbreaking loss, Rudy and the Notre Dame Irish had to move on to their next game against North Carolina. We start this game off on 3rd and 3, where Rudy is getting into the backfield on the first drive of the game to put an end to it. But this coach always seems to take Rudy out and put him in at the worst times. Because even though Notre Dame's defense gets a stop here, North Carolina ends up scoring without Rudy on the field. Luckily, North Carolina would end up throwing a pick towards the end of the game, and Notre Dame would eventually escape Chapel Hill with a W.
A strong, methodical, workmanlike effort from this team.
And just because Rudy was now getting playing time, it doesn't mean that he was going to stop working hard. And he wanted to set the tone going into his next game against Stanford.
Segan renovated and Holtz restored. Notre Dame Stadium, the home of the Fighting Irish.
To start this game off, Rudy finds himself making an impact early, getting a big stop in the backfield. And although once again when Rudy was on the field, the defense was getting stops, Coach would continue to take Rudy out, and Stanford would continue to score more points. Eventually, though, Notre Dame would make a big comeback, and once again when Rudy was on the field, his teammates were stepping up, as they got a big pick here. But with Rudy being forced to watch from the sidelines, there was really only so much that he can do. Because after Coach took Rudy off the field once again, Stanford actually found a way to kick a field goal and take the lead. And now Notre Dame has another loss on their record. And after the game, Rudy had noticed that he was actually getting a little close to being the #1 linebacker, so he put in a little bit more work being a leader. And they would need some leadership as they would try to fight for their playoff lives in their next game against Virginia.
Touchdown Jesus, the home of the Fighting Irish. We've got a terrific matchup for you today, rich in pageantry and tradition, and it ought to be a fantastic clash.
To start this game off, we see Rudy running over to put an end to this play before Coach takes him out for a while. Rudy was trying to do his job mitigating yards in this drive, but his teammates just didn't seem to be as locked in as he was, as they let up a big gain to get in the field goal range. But I guess it didn't really matter because Coach was taking out Rudy once again. By the time they put him back in the game, this score was completely different. So whenever he had the chance, he had to go out there and set the tone for his team. And that offense really responded well because with their backs against the wall, they went down the field and scored a touchdown to take the lead. And the starting defense did their job stopping the Virginia offense, allowing Notre Dame to escape with their first win in a while.
When we get to the offseason and they start having coaching clinics, they're going to roll this game tape back to show both offense.
Dial it up and let it run.
After the game, Rudy made sure to make a couple upgrades because he wanted to make sure that he can get around the field faster. And he felt like it would come in handy going into his next game against Florida State.
Chief Osceola, Renegade, and the Florida State Seminoles, a place simply known as the Dope. Maybe you need a little caffeine, or maybe the sheer energy of this matchup will keep you wide awake.
Starting this game off on 1st and 10, Rudy is rushing the passer and getting Bobby Boucher-like pressure, forcing the quarterback to throw a bad pass that resulted in an interception for Notre Dame. Rudy found himself back out on defense, giving 100% effort, chasing after ball carriers that were halfway across the field. And with the Notre Dame offense doing a good job putting points up, Rudy knew all they had to do was keep getting stops on 3rd down to control this game. And throughout this game, Rudy was doing a great job disrupting the backfield and letting Florida State know about it. Florida State would have a really hard time holding on to the ball this game, because not only would Notre Dame force them to fumble, but there was a play where Rudy dropped back into coverage and said, "Wang! Rudy!" Going for his first interception of his entire football career, one-handed at that. And at that point, this game was done. Rudy had officially sealed this game for Notre Dame, but the job was far from finished because they had another game to get into against Navy.
Home to legends like Bellino and Staubach, the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, and home to the Midshipmen of Navy. This matchup today, part of the lifeblood of the sport.
Starting this game off on 1st and 10, Rudy sees pretty quickly that they're just running a triple option. And although there were some plays where they would do other things like run screen passes, when Rudy was on the field, all that stuff would usually get shut down, just like I did here on 3rd and 19 with this interception. Or like another play on 3rd and inches, where they did it once again. Now, Rudy's old high school actually ran a triple option, so he knew that he had to just hit somebody no matter what. And one of Rudy's teammates might have ran a triple option too, because he reads this one play so well that he actually catches the pitch in the air to force a turnover. But with the triple option being such a one-dimensional scheme, the coach knew that this was the perfect game to keep Rudy in, because they could just have him blitz the line of scrimmage every single time, and on pass plays he could have an opportunity to get a sack like he did here. I mean, isn't it crazy how someone so little could make such a big impact? It was great to see Notre Dame's defense following Rudy's lead, because they got another interception here in the 4th quarter to put this game away, which they desperately needed because they needed to start stacking up wins to get in the playoffs. And Rudy also knew that. So after the game, he made some upgrades to his pass rush, and he was hoping that would make an impact in his next game against Syracuse.
Fighting Irish. And while today is the final home game of the season for one team, it is more importantly a celebration, Senior Day. As we'll see, the number 14 team in the country, the Syracuse Orange, taking on the 18th ranked team in the land, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
And to start this game off on 2nd down, this Notre Dame defense knew they had to step up this game against the ranked opponent. And when Rudy was on the field, he made sure to lay some big hits, just like he did here on this play. And there was a 3rd down where Rudy had actually dropped back to pass and almost got an interception, but either way, he got this defense off the field. It was crazy seeing someone the size of Rudy consistently making his way into the backfield, or even just moving around the field and making tackles anywhere. Because even on plays where the defense was getting cooked and some of the players were giving up on the play, that could never be Rudy. Because he didn't care if he had to chase somebody 40 yards downfield. He would do what he could to make the tackle. But by the end of the game, Notre Dame had found a way to win it without putting Rudy in too much. But his teammates really credited Rudy for being a leader and inspiring them to play better. But Rudy also wanted to play better. So he made another upgrade going into his next game that actually brought him to an 83 overall. But Rudy and the rest of the Fighting Irish knew that going into their final game of the season, they had to win it against USC, because it was the only way that they could maintain their spot in the college football playoffs. So they went on ahead and got prepared to take on the Trojans.
Memorable moments in sports, and also home to the USC Trojans, who are prepared to fight on once again today. As we wind our way toward the end of another college football season, one of the grand traditions is paying tribute.
Starting this game off on 2nd and 2, Coach puts Rudy out there for a play before taking him out until the 2nd quarter. And honestly, this Notre Dame defense seemed to understand the assignment today, because there was multiple times in this game where they were absolutely destroying the quarterback, including another play on 3rd down where Notre Dame turns him into a Trojan sandwich. But when he wasn't too busy worrying about his well-being, that USC quarterback was getting busy throwing picks to the Notre Dame defense. Because there was another play where Rudy had actually dropped back into coverage and said, "Hey, Rudy, 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 Rudy!" Going for his 2nd pick of the season in the biggest game of the year. But when Rudy wasn't picking the ball off, he was getting to the line of scrimmage and destroying ball carriers twice his size. And by the end of the night, Notre Dame had won the game and officially sealed their spot in the college football playoffs. But that wasn't the end of the good news for Rudy, because going into the following week, the coaches had told Rudy that they want him to have an opportunity to be the starting middle linebacker for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And with Rudy having improved so much over the past couple years, there was absolutely no way that he was going to give up this opportunity. And by the end of the practice, Rudy Ruettiger was finally the starting middle linebacker for Notre Dame. And now that the regular season was over, Rudy was kind of happy to see somebody that transferred to a new school win the Heisman. He was hoping that maybe that can be him someday. But for now, he had bigger fish to fry, because Notre Dame had their first-round playoff game against Texas Tech.
This 12-team playoff in front of a home crowd and a raucous environment. This is a very intriguing matchup. One team that earned the right to host this game and enjoy tremendous crowd support against another team that slipped into the playoff, trying to establish a tradition now of upsets in the first round of the CFP. We
start this game off on 1st down and 10, where Notre Dame isn't exactly having the best start. allowing a pretty big gain up the middle. And even though Rudy is the #1 linebacker for this team now, for some reason after the second down, coach decides to take Rudy out until the second quarter, maybe just to keep him fresh for later. And Notre Dame definitely needed it, because they found themselves down at one point. So right here on this third down, Rudy knew that he needed to make a play. So he broke through the line of scrimmage to rush the passer, and him and some other teammates combined for a sack. And after his offense had finally taken the lead, Rudy had made the mistake of getting a little too excited, because he causes the first penalty of his career. And by the end of the drive, Texas Tech was able to find themselves into the end zone for another touchdown. But after halftime, Notre Dame's defense was really starting to step it up, as they got a stop here on third down on the opening drive of the second half. But once again, I believe the coaches didn't really think they needed Rudy that much, because they kept him out for large portions of this game. Because although they did allow him to go back out on the field for one play in the fourth quarter, they took him out pretty much immediately after his teammate got a flag. But regardless, Rudy was happy that Notre Dame had finally won this game and that they were moving on to the next round. Rudy and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish were now in the biggest games of the season, and they would need to keep playing like it going into the next game against UCF.
Site of this year's Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and of course part of the college football playoff. It's time now for the quarterfinals, for the top 4 seeds, a time to begin their quest for the national championship.
After the offense gets out to a nice start taking the lead, the defense makes sure to respond by getting multiple stops on the opening drive of the game.
Bringing pressure, the pocket breaking down.
But honestly, this UCF offense just did not come prepared this game, because by the end of the second quarter, UCF found themselves down 21 without having even barely made it past midfield. And it seemed like every third down that they would get to, either Rudy or one of his teammates would be there to make a stop. Just like Rudy did here on this third down and 2 at the end of the third quarter. But now down 28, UCF wasn't just going to lie down and give up, as they take a shot downfield in the fourth quarter that goes for a touchdown. And even with the score continuing to mount up, UCF would continue to fight and show heart, kind of like Rudy. But as the fourth quarter continued to roll on, and Rudy continued to make plays, this game had officially begun to get out of hand. And Notre Dame would finally take down UCF to win another college football game in the Peach Bowl. But before going into another game that could potentially send Notre Dame to the national championship, Rudy works on getting an ability that should help him block shed more. And Rudy would definitely need that going into the Rose Bowl game against Georgia.
This year's Rose Bowl presented by Prudential is a crucial part of the college football playoff. We've reached the semifinal stage, one last hurdle to clear before that national championship game. And today we're going to find out who's got the toughness and the depth to continue their drive and keep championship dreams alive. As we'll see the number 5 seed in this playoff, the Georgia Bulldogs, taking on the number 8 seed in the playoff, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. For EA Sports College Football, I'm Chris Fowler, joined by Kirk Herbstreit, and here we go, a college football playoff semi-final.
Now starting this game off on 1st and 10, Notre Dame's defense seemed to be extremely locked in, because they get an interception here on the very first play of the game.
Not much on the return there, but the takeaway will give the offense the football at the 46.
But although Rudy hadn't actually done anything wrong on this play, the coach decides to take Rudy out until the second quarter, where Georgia is already in the red zone. And unfortunately, this Notre Dame defense had lost its rhythm without Rudy in the lineup, because right here, Georgia takes an end around that goes down the field for a touchdown.
The spin move makes it across the goal line.
The coach just kept taking Rudy out, even to the point where there was another possession that allowed Georgia to score 3 more points. But Rudy was still going to make an impact when he could, getting a stop here in the backfield before halftime. And with Rudy back, this defense decided to really step it up again, going for a well-needed pick 6 here.
Going the other way, can they catch him? Gonna take it all the way in, pick 6.
And with Notre Dame now leading by 1, Rudy and the rest of his defense knew that they needed to start getting some stops. So that's exactly what they did here on third down. But unfortunately, once again, the coaches take Rudy off the field, and Georgia scores with him out the game. And now with Georgia taking the lead back, Rudy knows that all he can do is just try to make a play whenever he can, before coach would take him out of the game again all the way until the end of the fourth quarter. And unfortunately, now down by 14, there wasn't really much left that Rudy could do, because Georgia even kicked the field goal as time expired to help them seal this game and put an end to Rudy Ruettiger's first real season with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And that is the story of Rudy so far. If you want to see more Rudy, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel down below. If you guys get this video to 1,000 likes, Rudy will return to finish what he started. But also definitely be sure to comment down below what else you guys want to see next. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. And other than that, I'm going to catch you guys next time.